police departments are having extreme difficulty recruiting people. It's very, very hard. And it's not just the Eastern Shore, it's all up and down in the country. A year and a half ago, we created a new retirement program so our officers could retire at 22 years. We immediately had a captain and about 5 senior sergeants retire. That has good things and bad things. One of the good things is the younger people get to move up. And that's the problem with the small police department is in a large police department, you have places you can go. But in a small department, you're waiting for a captain or a lieutenant to retire. And we're down a few officers right now, and we're trying to get caught up. We just graduated one from the academy last week. And so, but that he has, I believe it's 240 hours that he's got to ride with a senior officer to get into the swing of things, and then I'll turn him loose. So we're faced with how do we get competitive all of a sudden? We're competitive now. And you also hear, well, you know, Baltimore County makes so much. Well, you know what? I've done that. Those guys that get that money in Baltimore County, they earn it. They go from call to call to call to call. They see fits of violence that never occur here. As I mentioned, I think we've got a pretty good police department, and they're all that. I was just out with we were at the Maryland Municipal League this last week, and I talked to the chief. I talked to him anyway, but we were talking about the different kinds of training and stuff that they're going through, and we had someone that was not familiar with it, so he gave more instruction. And these guys have a certain amount of training they have to do every year, and so we have to keep up. And this is in contrast from when I started. Municipal departments probably had 5 or 6 weeks training. Sometimes they put the people out on the road before they had training. Now these guys have about 5 months of the academy, and they go down to Salisbury, and then they have to pass all these issues. I think there's some 964 issues they have to cover while they're at the academy. Then they come out, and then they go through the field training, and then they've got to do in-service training. All of them have to do it. And I forget what the number of hours is. It's significant. The complexion of rural communities is changing, and Easton in particular is changing. While not having been a fireman, I'm familiar with them, is that for long periods of time, the fire department was sort of the social center that they would go and people would let them do it, they'd take the time off and stuff. Well, that's changing. We're having trouble finding people who can drive the equipment during the daytime. My understanding is that Easton Utilities is helping and stuff like that, but it's becoming an issue. The other part of the issue is the same we have with the police department, is recruiting people. The past year, from what our last police board, that's where the fire board, excuse me, comes in 3-4 times a year and tells us we've had a good year recruiting. So that's a positive thing. But what people will have to understand, at the point that we can no longer recruit, or the age group gets that we don't have enough people out there, then something has to be done. Now, I watched this happen in Fairfax. I was living in Fairfax County, and I want to tell you, that for a little town like this, it'd be about $7 million bite to do this. So we're already crunched in the budget. We're trying to, we're facing, we probably need to help the police department some more to make them more competitive. So we have these numbers, and the numbers aren't there right now. It's safe to say that we know that these things are coming. We're talking about them all the time. Right now we're trying to deal with the police department thing, because that's the thing at hand. Because right now the fire department is okay, but we can't be oblivious to this. We have to be forthright. We need to anticipate something could happen. Okay, well, infrastructure, you know, we've got a pretty old city. And like a couple years ago when they were doing Aurora Street, they dug up the surface and they found like the gas lines about this far below the surface, and some of them were so old they're actually transparent. So Easton Utilities had to stop what they were doing, and they had to, so that's what we've been doing all up down Aurora. We've got water, stormwater system, like down near the hospital where it plugs up a little bit, where after 100 years you've got roots going through it, but the problem is a lot of these things go under people's houses, so you can't just take a bulldozer and dig them all up. Now we've found, I haven't, but our public works people have found a way to rotor-rooter those pipes, and then there's a sleeve they put through, and they apparently heat treat it or something, and it expands and it fills up the holes. It's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than tearing somebody's house down. But we're doing a lot of that, and we have water problems all through the town that we're trying to address. If you've been here, when I first moved here, many times I'd be standing down at Dover Street and Harrison Street in a heavy thunderstorm, and you have water this deep running down. That's not happening as much, and we've done a lot to improve that. But it's a continuing thing. We have to be replacing. Sort of like with Easton Utilities, they're keeping ahead of the picture. You know, we're the only municipality in the country, for example, that has its own system. Indeed, we do need a sidewalk through there, and people complain about development. We want a sidewalk. Well, you know what? It keeps them off the street, and it makes it so you can walk from one business to another. I think that's important. Waterside Mall is sort of difficult, but I mean, having watched US Route 1 in Alexandria, we had no sidewalks. People walk across the street. At one point, in one location where I worked, 2 pedestrian crashes in a period of 6 months involving the same kid. You get halfway across the street and you have an epileptic fit right in the middle of a 6-lane divided road. And he had no other way to get across. I just lost my next door neighbor here about 2 months ago from a fire. And I'm very conscious of that. He's an older gentleman. And the houses in Easton Club don't have sprinklers. A year and a half ago, the state had enacted a new law. And what it is if you have the smoke detectors that are hooked together electrically, if they're over 10 years old, they need to be replaced. If you have battery charged ones, you need to have the sealed batteries that last for 10 years. This is important. I lived in Easton Club and at Easton Club East, and I went for them and I said, look, I bought, my house was the newest one and it was just about to expire, so I know that 95% of these houses, they're out of date. Does that mean something's terrible going to happen? No. But what it does mean, in the Maryland legislature, if you get a bill passed, they were able to convince the legislature that the new technology is that much better than the old technology. And second, if you don't do anything with it, you don't know if it's working. And so, like my next door neighbor, we don't know, because I was in and out of the house 5 or 6 times before I left, and my lady friend walked out at 8:30 to put the trash can out, and smoke was coming out of the eaves. And then they got the fire department there. Well, we don't know how long he'd been dead, but had he had the smoke detector, if he'd had, for an older person, had one of these buttons, he did have one of those, metal clerk, he didn't use it. So, but the communities here are slow in doing this. We're going to be, it's my big thing. I would like to get people to be aware of it. Can't make them do it. The fire marshal's not going to be raiding houses to say, do you have that? But if you try to sell or rent a house, it's going to have to be up to our town inspectors will check it.